As real estate investors, we know we can create passive income and generational wealth through our real estate investments. However, we have to make sure that we protect that investment as well. Today, we speak with Jonathan Feniak, who is the lead attorney from LLCattorney.com, where they specialize in business formations, asset protection, and estate planning. Now, Jonathan shares some excellent tips on things we can do as investors to protect our assets, both from a privacy perspective as well as estate planning. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. Check out our interview right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7 questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to the show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Now, lead attorney Jonathan Feniak is the driving force behind LLCattorney.com with the mission to make quality legal guidance accessible to business owners and individuals across the country. Now, specializing in asset protection, estate planning, and business formation, he provides practical solutions that empower clients to protect their assets and build strong legal foundations. Let's welcome to the show, Jonathan Feniak.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, talk to your listeners, and hopefully get some really actionable advice to them in a way that doesn't require hiring a super expensive attorney. And that's really what the LLC attorney brand is about just really democratizing the advice that, the wealthy and those who have really long-term legal relationships, what they're able to leverage, allowing our customers to get the same thing at a low, affordable price without taking any shortcuts on how that protection will work for them.
Yeah, I love it, Jonathan. We're definitely going to dive into that more. But before we do, I kind of read a couple lines of your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take a couple of minutes and fill in some of the gaps in your background?
Yeah, so I'm a third career attorney. I started out transportation logistics. I was talking earlier about I'm an on-time guy. I'm always on time. I'm early. And that's incredibly important to me. That organization that you learn in, I worked for UPS, DHL, Airborne Express, large organizations, that sort of stuff, learn those basics of working at scale. And then went and got an MBA. And went into finance. And so a number of different roles in finance, raising money for hedge funds, investing money in companies for hedge funds, lending money to companies all across the board, and transitioned into high net worth wealth management. So as a financial advisor, Series 7 and 66, registered rep for Wells Fargo Advisors, and then said, you know what, I've built optionality in my life here. I want to go to law school. Went to law school full time at the age of 45. Graduated just before the pandemic. Prior to that, all that experience had been in sort of these roles where there was interactions with attorneys, working with attorneys on the legal side, on the estate planning, working with attorneys for my high net worth clients, as well as on the financial side, and came into the law looking to not so much practice the law, to build businesses that allowed more people to access the law. One of the most frustrating things for folks out there is just how expensive it is to get good legal advice, actionable legal advice. That idea of, it depends. If you hear that from an attorney, it's like, well, come on, man, what do I do? Right. But that's what we focused on with, and I'm so happy been able to grow here for 5 years with LLC Attorney and our other brands, our other properties, and the way that we form companies for over 80,000 people we formed companies for, and are continuing to create innovative products and services that allow people to run their companies in a way that's going to limit their downside. That's what we want to do. Is we want to make sure people have limited downside in the event something goes wrong.
Jonathan, I love hearing your background. You talk about a third career attorney, and I had to hesitate for a second because my ears, I think, naturally heard third generation. I was like, no, he didn't say
No.
generation. He said career. And you talked about, starting off, you were in logistics, work for DHL and some of these companies where, again, timeliness and punctuality certainly under driving points of, what those companies are about. You transition from that to the finance world, get your MBA, you're working in finance, you end up becoming a financial advisor. And then at the age of 45, you decide to go full time into school, get your documents and get your degrees to become an attorney and end up launching, LLCattorney.com amongst other businesses that you run. And you talked about the goal really to democratize legal advice. So I want to go to the point where you decided to go to school because
Right.
ultimately many people are listening to this show, not necessarily because they want to go back to college, but they realize they're not either fulfilled in what they're doing, they want more passive income, but they're looking to make some changes in their lives. And they're looking at real estate maybe as a vehicle to help them navigate and create the flexibility that they're looking for. You
Yeah.
mentioned that at that point for you, you had some flexibility yourself. Why did you decide to go full time into school to study to be an attorney?
So, as a financial advisor, the part I loved most was sitting down with my clients, talking through their issues, helping them come up with solutions. I do have real estate. I have a pension. I have retirement accounts. I'm going to get my Social Security. Working through those things in complex situations. Everyone is different. Everyone's similar, right? But everyone is different, and coming up with complex plans, but actionable, right? We can handle everything. And there was a change going on in that space, though, where the firms want you to bring in the people, get them sit down, close them, right? Get them to be customers, and then hand them off to a really just products that were for the masses. And I didn't like that. That wasn't a part of the job I liked. Yes, every job involves some sales, but I did not want to be a salesperson, and that's what it was turning into. And so then I had a mentor as an attorney, a lot of attorney friends, but one in particular was a mentor. He's like, John, you're talking about the practice of law. That's what you do. Every client comes in, they've got some complex problems, and you tell them what to do. They listen to you, they don't listen to you. It's not really, at that point in time, you have given though, your experience in these areas of law as well as your life experience, and you're able to say, this is the thing that is best for you. Or sometimes you say, I'm not the right guy. Right. And that happens a lot. Like, we may not be LLC attorney, may not be the right company for someone who wants to launch that syndication. Right. Yeah, we can form all their entities for them, but you need someone who can help you. You've got effectively a securities offering, right? You're raising money. You need someone who can do that. That's not what I do, but knowing what you can do well and what you can't do. It was that aha moment at being a financial advisor, like the law, being a lawyer is where I get to dive into people's lives, hear everything that's going on, and come up with a plan for them.
Yeah, I love that, right? Because I mean, it doesn't feel like those two careers are that closely related, but listening to you talk, it does make sense, right? As a financial advisor, you're talking to people, you're learning about their situation, you're helping them strategize what some of the best solutions are. And as an attorney, it's very similar, especially in the space you're talking about, right? With asset protection, estate planning, those kind of things are very similar. And that's what you enjoyed, but you weren't really able to do that as much in your job. So you made that
Mhm.
transition and ultimately launched LLCattorney.com. Let's talk about that, right? Because I love as you talked about democratizing it. And I know we've had, different attorneys on the platform and talk about, asset protection and wealth building. That's one of the reasons everyone's listening to the show,
Mhm.
right? They want to figure out how to create passive income and generational wealth. And we got to be able to protect that, right? Because the thing that can stop
Exactly.
you is if you get wiped out from a lawsuit or unfortunately something bad happened and now your assets are all caught up in probate or whatever the situation is. So talk to us about maybe some of the common challenges that most people face when it comes to asset protection and kind of build wealth.
Yeah. Well, I want to make clear. So Mark Pierce and Andrew Pierce, they founded this company way back in Wyoming, 8-9 years ago. Started out, Mark Pierce is an attorney focused on asset protection, and his son saw an opportunity to say, "Hey, all of these people, they're doing estate planning, but they also have businesses," and started up the registered agent and entity formation business. I joined the company in 2020, and from there, we went from where we were just doing things in Wyoming. We started doing things in Colorado. I was like the Colorado branch. And then we merged things together. We said, we can do this in 50 states. There's really compelling need for this. And then the LLC attorney brand is really to just make it clear, like we believe and we're firm believers in the protections of Wyoming. But LLC attorney is like, look, we don't just want to get people who are looking for Wyoming and understand those benefits, but for everyone. And then you say, hey, Wyoming is a really good place, or maybe you just need an LLC in your home state. So I want to make it clear on that point. The democratization of these services. It's hard to tell as a purchaser of an LLC when you're new to the space. What do you actually need? Right. And when you're talking to an attorney, the attorney, I hope, observing their ethical obligations, is going to say, you need these things. You don't really need these other things in order to achieve these goals. But it's tough. Like if you go to a mechanic and you're not a mechanical person, I don't know whether I need a new muffler or a new catalytic converter. I don't know. I need to trust that person. And the thing that we focused on with LLC attorney and our other, Wyoming LLC attorney and other brands is that, there is an attorney guiding the products and services that are provided. We're not a law firm. Just to be clear, LLC attorney is not a law firm. You're not paying law firm prices, right? Most people never speak to an attorney, but our promise is that if you're being offered something in our client portal as a customer, you need it, right? It's not a snake oil. And I hear so many, whether they're TikTokers or other people out there, are selling things that there's so much buyer's remorse once the people get them, or they can't, the complexity is unnecessary and all these other things. That's what democratization means. We're a trusted partner. If we're offering it, we believe in it, right? And I don't think there's many others out there from this, the mass entity formation sort of people or companies out there, without mentioning any names, that can say that you can get it with a lawyer, but that's cost prohibitive for so many people. So that's our focus. That's what we have arrived at, and we feel that it is sorely needed when it comes to entity formations, because entity formations are the linchpin, the foundation of that asset protection, and really estate planning. All the other things that we've been discussing here, that is the core of what it is we do, because we think it is the most important part.
So you mentioned trying to understand what you actually need, and I like that analogy of going to the mechanic, right? Because we get some services at the home, and everybody, they come in. I get that there's an upsell. I get there's always things you could probably do if I wanted to, live in this house for the next 100 years or drive that car for 500,000 miles.
Right.
I just came for an oil change. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like if I don't have to change every filter or the everything else that's in there,
Exactly.
let's figure out what we actually need to do. And you kind of do need to trust that person. Say, hey, this, if you find something that's legit, that's different. But if it's just a service that you can make a little bit extra money on, that's where you got to be careful. And it's really hard to
Yeah.
figure out what's what there. So it sounds like that's kind of where your company focuses, is to say, hey, here are the
100%.
things you absolutely need. Certainly, there are other things you could probably look into, but we're going to start with what you need and not necessarily just try to tax you with 50,000 upgrades. I want to get into the challenges you see, because
Hmm.
most folks are not that familiar with kind of the law and what they need when they're starting a business or when they're trying to plan for their estate. What are some of the common mistakes you see business owners make, either when they're forming their businesses or planning
Hmm.
for their estate?
So in terms of forming the business, people think that once they form the business, that's it. That's the first and last step. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And if you form the company and then don't respect the company, a court will not respect the company. So what does it mean to respect the company? Do you observe corporate formalities, right? Do you have meetings, right? And a lot of times, you're a single member LLC, you're the only one. I have a meeting when I'm driving in my car, right? But it's a meeting. I'm thinking about in detail who I'm going to work with, who I'm going to hire, what piece of property I'm going to buy. Am I going to distribute money to myself? Do I need to make a contribution to the company? Those sorts of things. And what I recommend is those meetings, you actually memorialize it, right? And have it on your calendar so that once a month, if I looked at your company's books and records, I would see, boom, company has real meetings. It acts like a real company. Even though it's just one guy, it acts like a real company. That's a big part of it. Keeping your company in good standing with the state. Did you file your annual reports on time and accurately, right? Did you maintain a registered agent? If you don't pay your registered agent, then the registered agent is going to resign and you're not going to meet that be able to check that box. Do you have an annual meeting, right? These are small things, but they're everything when it comes to protecting yourself from claims that may be made against the company, so we don't wind up with something called veil piercing, where the owner is held liable, or something where they are able to just hold you personally liable because you really weren't acting like a company. The company was your alter ego, or you're making decisions based on personal goals and desires, not on, I am the manager, member, owner of this company. I'm making the decision in the best interest of the company. Another thing is the finances of the company. Your bank account, and if you got a credit card for the company, should be an incredible history and the truth about what's going on with this company. Great for audits, right? But it's also from the asset protection perspective. If all the rent you receive goes into that company bank account, all the expenses are paid at that company bank account, and then you do a distribution from that company bank account to yourself, that is fantastic, right? You are not treating this like your alter ego. I see they set up an LLC, people set up an LLC, and then they're taking payments in their personal Venmo account, or they're taking cash, or they get a check made out to the lease is in their personal name, right? And they didn't actually transfer the deed from the property. They got a conforming mortgage. It's in their personal name, but they've got an LLC who's responsible. That messy stuff is what is going to, I hate to say it, don't even bother forming an LLC. Save your $200, right? Get more insurance and just do it in your personal name, because the LLC is going to be collapsed. It's your alter ego. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah,
that's what I see.
Points,
that's
right?
A common problem.
Yeah, that's something, especially starting out. I was listening to this video earlier today, and this guy was talking about when you're starting a business, just focus on making money right away, and you don't have to worry about all this other stuff. I'm like, I get the point. However, you could form some really bad habits doing that. And I do believe it's really important to set yourself up where, at least from a financial standpoint, whatever money you're making, it's coming through the business. Bills that you're paying, it's coming through the business. You want that to be set up and clean out of the gate, because you do run into the situation where you're commingling funds. It's not a real business. And now you subject yourself to the liability of, all your personal assets being exposed. And that's the whole reason you created an LLC, or many times one of the main reasons why you create an LLC, especially if you don't have other partners in that business. We do syndication deals. I know a lot of people do JV deals when they're buying assets. When you have those partnerships, what are you seeing when it comes to the partnership side? What are some things that people need to pay attention to there?
Well, one of the things there, the privacy is important there. And, I've said this example before, right? You invest as a limited partner in your personal name in a syndication. And it turns out that Jeffrey Epstein co-invests in his personal name in that limited, in that syndication, right? Now, you don't know Jeffrey Epstein. You never met Jeffrey Epstein, but you can imagine, dude, you invested with Jeffrey Epstein, man. What's wrong with you, right? I had a client back when I was a financial advisor, had invested in Bernie Madoff in their personal name, right? And Bernie Madoff, there was a bankruptcy. They're listed. If you search this guy to this day, you search him, investor in Madoff. So does that cause people to think something of you, right? If one of your investments goes bad, you invested in a syndication and then you're trying to do more. They're like, well, I see you invested in a lot of failed syndications where the syndication went bankrupt. that's not a good look, right? So if you're investing in those kinds of things, having an LLC, a holding company isn't a special kind of company, not a special kind of LLC. It describes what it does. It doesn't have any liability of its own. It owns other companies. Those other companies can be, it owns your limited partnership interests and syndications. It could own LLCs that own real estate. It could own LLCs that do property management or something else. But that gives you privacy so that if something goes wrong at one of those other company levels, your name's not automatically attached to it in a public way, as opposed to, I mean, gave those bad scenarios. There's a lot of times that can happen. So that privacy component with a holding company is important. Well, how's my name going to come out? That's a scenario. It is whether it was a bankruptcy or litigation, you could be attached to some bad outcome for very little cost to have a holding company, especially in Wyoming. It's a very cheap state to do it. That is a great way to set yourself up. The second benefit is that if you own things through a Wyoming holding company, there's something called charging order protection. And charging order protection is if there is a claim against you as an individual, right? You get in a car accident and you've got a judgment creditor and they say, what assets do you have? If you say, well, I got a piece of real estate in Colorado, great, we'll take it, right? And they go and they put a lien on it. If you've got an LLC in a lot of states, most states, they can actually foreclose on your membership interest in that Colorado LLC, right? Wyoming has the strongest charging order protection in the country. And what it says is that if there's a judgment against the member of an LLC, that creditor can't disturb the LLC. They can't foreclose on the member interest. They can't break into the LLC and disturb its operations, take its cash, freeze its accounts, do any of those things. They sit on the outside and they wait. That is what they can do. Right. So that's a huge benefit if something does go wrong in some area of your personal life where your assets that you own through this holding company are going to be protected from those claims. So you can continue to make income, right? Even though you got a big judgment against you for something that happened personally, you are still going to be able to operate your businesses. And, there are going to be some restrictions if they do get the charging order. But what I found is Wyoming, it is not a pot of gold. If you say I've got a Wyoming holding company, they don't even bother. They're not going to get a charging order. They're going to try to go after you in some other way, some assets that you may have in your personal name somewhere. So really protective and prevents this disturbance of your businesses and your investments.
That's really, really good feedback. And I should probably note, you mentioned that you guys are not a law firm, and this is certainly not legal advice, or, please don't hold Jonathan or myself responsible for some of the insights and the things we're talking about in here. But certainly these are things you should look into more yourself strategically to see if this could help you and your family with some of the things you are looking to do. With that said, I really like that example, and it kind of ties back to where we started the conversation. For these kind of conversations and strategies, typically folks have to go hire those attorneys to sit and understand their situation and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. And maybe it helps them, maybe it's not necessary. So with LLC attorney, and let's just use what we talked about, right? That holding company as an example where we can hold our assets into this holding company, both from a privacy standpoint, but also from an estate planning standpoint. Because I know for us, every time we buy a property, I have to then figure out, okay, did I update the will? Did I do this? Did I do that?
That's exactly,
yep. And to have that.
I keep ignoring that point. I'm sorry. I keep glossing over it. But yes, 100%. And yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I'm
jump
sorry
in though.
for
But
also
that's
not
the point,
answering
right?
it the two other times.
So talk about that though, right? Because there are multiple layers to why, right? There's the privacy component, there's the asset protection component, there's the estate planning, which is, let's say nothing bad happens, right? But every year, let's just say you buy one new house every year, right? I know a lot of investors, that's their plan, right? Hey, we're going to buy a house every year. Great, right? What happens if 5 years from now you get hit by a bus, right? With that proverbial bus that always hits someone. Have you protected all that? Like, is that clear? Did you update your will every single year? You have multiple kids, right? If you only had one kid when you started and you had another kid, did you I know for a lot of people, it's life, right? Like you did the will, you did the trust, but you did it 10 years ago, and your life looks a lot different today than it did 10 years ago.
100%.
Just talk about some of that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So, great point. And again, so sorry for missing that the two other times you
No,
asked.
you're good.
Uh, if you have in a best case scenario, you've got all of those properties and LLCs in a single state, right? There would be an estate proceeding, probating in that state. What is really problematic is if you've got properties in multiple states. A lot of investors do. They want some diversification. That means if you don't have it set up in advance, even if you have just a will, it's not good enough. You're going to have an ancillary estate proceeding in all of those states, right? So what that leads to is you've got to not just how expensive probate is, and let me explain probate, right? If you die with a will, right, or without a will, then all of your assets need to be reported to the courts. The courts will determine who your heirs are, look at your will, or if you don't have a will based on the laws of intestacy in that state. And then they'll say, okay, all of these assets are going to be divided up in this way across the board. Uh, Very inefficient, very expensive. Now imagine multiple states where that's happening because you have multiple assets in those states. A great way to prevent that is having a holding company. What do you own? I own one LLC, technically, right? I own 100 pieces of property, but I own all of it through one LLC that's located in Wyoming. And I make the member of my Wyoming LLC, the owner of my Wyoming LLC, my revocable living trust. Okay. Then whatever happens, no ancillary estate proceedings, and everything is clear. The trustee of your revocable living trust would step into your shoes. You are the trustee during your lifetime, be able to in an orderly way, manage all of those assets in this subsidiaries. And nobody would know. There wouldn't be any, oh, we need to go tell the LP, or tell the GP about this. You may have to. There was a transfer. So there are exceptions. But the real estate, no change. Your management company wouldn't change. Nothing would change. No operations change. How clean that would be. And people getting to the heart of the estate planning. Most people overpay, right? They get, my opinion, it's going to be, challenged, but okay. They try to create an estate plan, create a revocable living trust and estate plan that's going to manage everything that could happen in the future, right? You said, I didn't have kids then. I only had one kid instead of 4 kids. I didn't have, maybe you got a special needs kid, right? Maybe your spouse dies. Maybe you get remarried. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe the other thing. Maybe you get divorced. All of these things happen. And trying to create, let's not even talk about tax law and how that changes. If you try to build something that is trying to do all of this, it gets real expensive. And I can guarantee you there's going to be gaps. So my advice to people is do it on the cheap. Okay. Get something that works now, and know whenever there's a significant life change, you're going to update it. 5 years at the max, but any significant life change, birth of a new child, go get a new plan, right? And if you paid $5,000 for it, you're going to be reluctant to do that. But if you did it through, and I have to say, there's plenty of great online resources, trustandwills.com. I'm not pitching any of them. I'm not picking one out. Those sorts of things. You can get $500 to $1,000, a great plan that is good for the known future, right? But anytime there's a significant change in your life, update it and then look at it every 5 years. And example, when I had my kids were kids when they were young, they're grown now. But when they were young, we had in place, it was going to be my sister would be the guardian for them. Well, then, she had her own kid and her job and other things like, oh man, then my sister-in-law is going to be the guardian for them. Oh, and then she moved away and we moved to, and then by the time my kids were, they're 15, 16 years old, we're like, the only person who would be able to drop their life would be my mom. And so we changed it as our life changed, and we had done it on fairly on the cheap. So it was not a problem. I didn't have your sunk cost fallacy and the like, but it was easy to take the step. Let's redo it, because our life has changed significantly since this period of time. Now, an exception to this is going to be you're starting to get into the area where you're going to exceed the estate tax exemption, right? What is it today? you're at 7 million or so per person, a couple, I'm sorry, 13, 14 million per person, $28 million. If you're approaching that, God bless you. Go get a very complex plan, because there's a lot of estate planning and tax savings opportunities. Most people don't fall into that, right? You're in the couple of $1 million range and growing. Don't do something too complicated. And that is also people who are just starting out. I agree with you. Get that LLC. Once you have liability, right, and a potential liability, get that LLC in place, but don't get too complicated by half. I have people who are just starting out come to me, and they're getting their Cook Islands offshore trust. They've got 3 levels of entities. They've got a Nevis management company. They've got this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to say, what is going on? And the reality is they don't manage any of that. So they wind up, in the event push comes to shove, it's all going to fall apart anyway. It's a house of cards, right? That's the snake oil. That's what they got sold, something they didn't need. Usually those are not attorneys. That's some sort of, purveyor of these complex structures trying to, I don't know, feed on people's fear. That's not what I do. That's not what we do. I try to find the most reasonable solution for people based on the current situation, most reasonable structure based on their current situation. What risk do you have, right? What's your net worth? What types of risks do you have in your life generally? And then let's build something from there.
Jonathan, I appreciate that. I think it's really helpful for us to recognize. And you talked about look at your life events, maybe every 5 years, go get those documents updated, make sure it still makes sense. And, like you, I mean, my kids are 11 and 8. So I'm right there, right? Like their lives change. Other people's lives change. And,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't think this person is the right person to take over if something happens to us. So you definitely want to make sure staying on top of those things, just in case, we run into some life situations. With that said, with LLCattorney.com, I think one of the hesitations I imagine folks may have is, but will I get the same level of service? Like, is this really good enough for what I'm trying to do here, going to an online service? What kind of, access do they have to a real person? Is it just
Yeah.
templates? Like, what can investors and folks expect when they go to LLCattorney.com looking for assistance here?
Yeah, so we've tried to make it easy, and we do pick up the phone, right? So there's a team of business success specialists that I train, and we go over. They are not attorneys, right? They, though, have been trained by me. When someone comes in and says XYZ, the response is, generally our attorneys recommend blah blah blah, right? Generally, you would pick this choice. We've also created tools. Most people don't want, you younger folks, well, don't want to talk to someone on the phone, but they're there. They pick up the phone and are, business hours, even, whether you're East Coast, West Coast, or wherever it is, they pick up the phone and they do have fantastic information. We have an internal knowledge base that is thousands of items. So they have what I said on these topics. We have videos that they send about what I said on those topics. Again, everyone is important, right? And everyone is special, but you're not that different from most other people, right? You are. There may be some confluence of things going in your life that really are novel, but those are very few and far between. For those people who do want to talk to an attorney, we have a roster of attorneys in different areas that they can schedule. The easiest talking to an attorney you're ever going to experience. And I do these consultations still because I love it. I love talking to our customers and hearing what their needs are so we can create new products and services for them. But those are being done when I'm doing that work. It's through my law firm. And the other attorneys, they don't work for LLC attorney. They just have a relationship with us. They take those consultations, they speak to the customer, and they can give that actual legal advice based on their particular situation. And I had a call this morning, right? Great couple. They were in the military. They were in public service. They've been building their real estate portfolio. They're getting up to 3 or 4 properties now. They have owned them in their personal name, right? So we're talking about you're transferring it to LLCs. You got your holding company, maybe a management company, maybe this, maybe that. Went through the details and then gave them actionable advice at the end of that 30-minute call. I will probably never speak to them, and most of our attorneys are not going to speak to the folks again. But if they want an ongoing relationship, there's attorneys who act as outsourced general counsel. There's attorneys who will do engagements for intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights, those kinds of things. There's attorneys who are specialists in securities offerings, right? So there's all of these things. They're accessible if you need them, right? If you don't need them, then you never need to talk to them, right? And you don't need to pay them. You're going to pay, and the LLC attorney prices are very competitive. They're in the market, and you know what you're paying for. You actually need. So there's not this sort of upsell. Hey, well, this shiny thing over here. A new filter for your catalytic converter. I don't know if that's a thing. I'm not a car guy, but something like that. That's not going to happen. So between the online tools, between the and the business success team, and then the access to the attorneys, as well as knowing that the products and services that are on the website have been designed by attorneys and they're things you actually need, that should give people great peace of mind. Not for everyone. Again, you're doing the syndication. You're going to be the GP. You're going to need that specialized attorney. There's other things. If it's litigation, right, you should get specialists in that area of litigation and so on. But at the entity formation and the management, structuring, and those basic things that people are going to need to do, there are resources.
I love it. Listen, if you want to learn more, you should check that out. Go to llcattorney.com and check out the website. See what resources are there. And I believe you have a special offer for our listeners today, right?
Yeah, we do. I forget what the code was. Yeah, I think you wrote it down. I didn't have a pen.
Family 50.
Family 50, right. So if you go to llcattorney.com website and you, at the end of it, you put in that code, you're getting 50% off on formations or registered agent switches. So being a 50-state provider, forming companies in all 50 states, serving as registered agent, providing the services in all 50 states. And then also, if you want to talk to one of our attorneys, there's attorney consultation page there. Click through. And we don't position that in a way where the attorney name is important, right? So if you want to talk to me, you can dig through them. But it's really about what do you need? We're selling the whole, not the drill, right? Do I care what this individual attorney's name is? No, what I care is that they have expertise in this area. So it's expertise driven, which I think is innovative as well. Family 50, and look forward to talking to your listeners. I don't know, what other questions? Is there anything else?
That's it for this part, man. We're going to transition now to our round of insights. All right. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. All right, Jonathan, give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
I think, as a financial advisor, being unhappy with your career choice, right, and where you were going, and it's disheartening, right? But having that, that talk with myself, with my family, having the support of my family, being a financial advisor, was it a mistake? Maybe, right? Maybe. But going to law school and having the wherewithal to be able to do that, I think was a very important choice for me to make. I'm extremely happy with the choice I did make there. But, failure as a financial advisor and happiness with the position, I think is something that is a failure, to have made a bad choice.
Besides llcattorney.com, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
Boy, I'm not a super technical guy, but I have been using the Gemini AI. My son he's a computer science major, and he has helped me do it. And using this in the legal profession, it is fraught, right? There are real problems with it. We've seen people who try to, they're making up citations and all this other stuff. And so what he's taught me, though, is taking materials that I am 100% confident, right? Whether it's articles written, law review articles, or court decisions, and having the Gemini condense it into something that is very easy to understand is something I lean on it heavily. But making sure that I am responsible for the source material it's using, and then I review it all, and based on my general legal knowledge or knowledge of that subject, I'm able to, verify, modify, change. And so viewing it as it's a junior associate for me, or an intern who is taking a lot of dense material and turn it into things that are more, sort of more relatable and understandable. And then I take that and turn it into the stories. I've told half a dozen stories here that help solidify in people's minds what is the topic, what is the concern that I have, and what they want to protect themselves against. So Gemini, the AI, whatever it is, where you can upload files and you tell it only use these as your resources. That's very powerful and allows me to effectively, I'm building my own large language model on an ongoing basis.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Yeah, and so I had this question on another podcast, and I'm not a big reader. I don't sit down with books. What I do is I dig into the law every day, and I read vast amount of material every day, looking at court cases, looking at pronouncements. But there was all these things related to the Corporate Transparency Act, which was in the news. It went out, it was in place, it's not in place. 1,000 pages I read on the Corporate Transparency Act. So I was a subject matter expert on it. When it comes to these topics, I want to be completely informed, have thought through all of these things, and I need to be looking at the source material. So they're not books. They are court cases. I read the court cases. I read the law review articles and other articles by educational institutions on them, American Bar Association articles on them, and things like that. But I am not a consumer of books, but I read an incredible amount. In my off hours when I'm not sitting at my desk, I'm not going and reading a book for pleasure. So sorry on that answer, but that is the reality of who I am.
All good. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Daily habit that stays focused on my goals. I have a workspace at home where I do a lot of my time. I do work from home. And my daily habit is that I need to be at my desk. I don't try to work in any other place. That sort of is, state dependent learning for me, as well as I am in a defined space where these things happen. And it's a switch for my brain. I could go and, sit in other rooms of the house. It could be working here, it could be working there, co-work, whatever it is I want to do. I treat that place as, it is whether it's my courtroom or it is the, my church. That's where I sit when I am working. That is my habit, to be effective and really be tuned in and completely focused on my work. So that space that I'm in.
Give me your number one insight for protecting your assets.
The smaller the collection of assets, the better off you are. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you have an LLC, right, and people will put 10 pieces of property in one LLC, right? Well, you've got all the equity value in those 10 pieces of property exposed to the risk of one tenant having a slip and fall. Too big a bucket, right? What amount of equity would you be comfortable losing? Because whatever's in that LLC, you're losing. And don't, though, make it so fractionalized that you wind up with difficulty in management of it. It also is your personal life, right? How much do you have in any particular asset class? How much do you have invested at risk? Is it stock market risk? Is it real estate risk? Is it your property owning real estate risk versus syndication risk? How much do you have in your retirement accounts? How much do you have, what are the buckets there And then, say there's the correlation in a lot of cases winds up going to one, everything winds up being correlated when things are in, economically, there's problems. What is the correlation between those different asset classes? And as a financial advisor, people who wind up with the best outcomes were those who did have this diversification in, is it hard assets like real estate? Do they have commodities or exposure in that area where they tend to be sort of counter-cyclical, or they more act as a, counter-cyclical to what's going on in the stock market? What is their exposure, and then how do those things work together? The ones who had, those kinds of different exposures, some commodity or things like gold or digital assets, Bitcoin, real estate, and then stock bond portfolios wind up with great outcomes on it. So minimizing the risk in any one bucket, whether the bucket is an LLC or the bucket is where your asset allocation is, that's one of the things that I think is incredibly important from an asset protection perspective. So you can go on to fight another day. Something is going to happen. You are probably going to get sued. Can you go on to fight another day, or could it be ruinous for you? Don't get yourself in the situation where it's ruinous.
All right, we're going to go in a different direction and lighten the mood a little bit. You are in Puerto Rico. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh, man. So there's this little place. It's in a town called Luquillo, and it's called La Fonda. And they have a jibarro sandwich. I probably butchered the pronunciation on it. And what it is they take plantains, and the plantains replace the bread. And then they put a piece of mahi-mahi, beautiful grilled mahi-mahi with like a slaw. And it is a sandwich. Is it a sandwich? It doesn't have bread. I'm going to call it a sandwich with the plantains that are fried on either side. It is absolutely amazing. Sitting on the beach, eating that sandwich, and I could do that for the rest of my life.
Well, you get a little bit of the sweet flavor from the plantains as well. So
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. I love it, man. It sounds delicious. Well, sounds like a great place. I was in Puerto Rico around this time last year. So I'll have to put it back on the list there, man. But I love our conversation today. First of all, listening to you talk about switching careers. And for those folks who are maybe looking for something a little bit different, I think it's really inspiring to hear you talk about reflecting on the decisions you've made and deciding, you know what, this is what I like about what I'm doing. I don't really like these aspects. Why don't I put myself in a position to really focus on that? You went to law school and decided that was the path you wanted to go down. Now you're with LLCattorney.com. And you talked about really the democratization of law and legal advice, particularly when it comes to asset protection and estate planning for those business owners, and making sure we're making the right decisions, but doing so in a cost-effective manner. Again, for those folks who want to learn more, you can go to the website, LLCattorney.com, and there is a discount code for you there if you want to get started, where you can save 50% on a couple of services. Use that code for Family50. Again, the code is Family50. You can use that on the website. I just want to thank you again, Jonathan, for coming on the show today and giving us so many great insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Hey, thank you very much. This was awesome. It was great to speak with you, and glad I could share, some of the information that I share with my clients every day to help your listeners do it right, do it in a cost-effective way, and really deliver on the protections that they're signing up for.